The sun bore down on the Colorado frontier like a branding iron, scorching the earth until it cracked like old leather. Ethan Cole wiped the sweat from his brow with a dusty sleeve. Squinting across the endless expanse of his ranch, the fence posts needed mending again, third time this month. Wind had a way of testing everything out here, including a man's patience. He hammered another nail into the weathered wood, the rhythmic pounding echoing across the empty plains. Empty. That word sat heavy in his chest these days. The ranch sprawled for miles in every direction, yet felt smaller than a coffin since Margaret passed. Inside the house, her sewing room remained untouched. 6 months now, and he still couldn't bring himself to pack away her things. The half-finished quilt draped over her chair, needles still threaded through the fabric where she'd left it. Emily wouldn't go in there anymore. Said it made her stomach hurt. "Papa," Emily's voice carried from the porch. "The chickens are fighting again." "Let 'em sort it out," he called back, driving another nail home. At 8 years old, Emily worried about everything: chickens, horses, whether the corn would grow tall enough, whether her papa smiled enough. That last one cut deepest. The memory ambushed him, as they often did: Margaret's funeral. The preacher's words floating meaningless as dust while he stared at the pine box they'd lowered into the ground beneath the cottonwood tree. Emily's small hand in his, trembling like a bird. The neighbors filing past, murmuring condolences that slid off him like water off oiled canvas. He'd built that coffin himself, measured twice, cut once, just like she'd always reminded him when they worked together on the house. Seemed fitting he should build her final bed, though his hands had shaken so bad he'd driven half the nails crooked. "Papa, look." He turned toward Emily's voice, expecting to see her pointing at the squabbling hens. Instead, she stood rigid on the porch, one small finger aimed at the horizon. His blood chilled. The wall of dust rose like the world's ending, brown and massive and hungry. He'd seen storms before, but this monster belonged in nightmares. It devoured the sky, turning afternoon into dusk. Inside, he dropped the hammer and ran. "Now, Emily." She scurried through the door. Ethan grabbed what he could: the water bucket, the egg basket, and followed. Already the wind howled like wolves, and the first grains of sand stung his face. "Windows!" He barked the order more from habit than need. Emily knew the drill, racing to shutter each opening while he secured the door. The house groaned under the wind's assault. Sand hissed through every crack, every imperfect seal. "Under the table," he said, guiding Emily to their storm spot. She crawled beneath, clutching her corn-husk doll, the one Margaret had made last Christmas. The world outside disappeared. No sky, no ground, just brown fury beating against their walls. The lamp flickered, casting dancing shadows that made Emily whimper. "Sing something," she pleaded. His throat felt full of sand already. "Don't know any songs, sweetheart?" "Mama's song, about the rivers." He closed his eyes. Margaret's voice seemed to whisper through the storm, that lilting melody she'd hummed while kneading bread or mending clothes. He couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, but he tried. For Emily. The pounding on the door cut through his rough melody. Not wind too rhythmic, too desperate. His hand found the rifle before his mind caught up. "Please," a woman's voice, raw with terror. "Please, we need help." Emily started to crawl out, but he held her back. Could be anyone out there. Bandits used all kinds of tricks. The pounding came again, weaker. Through the howling wind, he heard something that decided him: a baby's cry. He unbarred the door, fighting to hold it against the wind. A figure stumbled through, clutching a bundle to her chest. Sand swirled in with her, but he forced the door shut and dropped the bar back in place. The woman collapsed to her knees, coughing. Her dark hair hung loose, full of dust. The bundle in her arms squirmed and wailed, definitely a baby. Real young, from the sound. "Mama!" Emily's voice came out small and confused. She'd crawled out from under the table, staring at the woman with wide eyes. "Mama?" "No, sweetheart." Ethan's chest tightened. "That's not—" But Emily had already run to the woman. Throwing her arms around her, the stranger looked up, revealing a face that stopped his breath. Not because she looked like Margaret, she didn't. Margaret had been fair, delicate as prairie flowers. This woman had olive skin and dark eyes that held steel despite her obvious exhaustion. But something in Emily's reaction, the way she'd called out. "Water," he said gruffly, grabbing the pitcher. "Here." The woman drank gratefully, still holding the baby close. When she lowered the cup, she focused on Emily. "Hello, little one. I'm not your mama, but you can help me with my baby. Would you like that?" Emily nodded solemnly, peering at the bundle. "What's its name?" "His name is Daniel." The woman's voice carried an accent he couldn't place. Not Spanish, but something softened by distance and time. "I'm Clara Monroe." "I'm Emily. This is my papa. My mama went to heaven." Clara's eyes found his, in them. He saw understanding. Loss recognized loss, even in a dust storm. "Let's get you cleaned up," he said. "Storm's not letting up anytime soon." He led them to Margaret's sewing room. Emily hadn't set foot in there for months, but now she walked right in, chattering to Clara about which chair was most comfortable and where the spare blankets were kept, like the room had been waiting for this. Clara sank into Margaret's chair. He tried not to flinch and unwrap the baby enough to check him. Little thing couldn't be more than 6 months, covered in dust but breathing steady. "Emily, fetch that washing basin," he instructed, "and some clean cloths." While Emily scurried off, he studied Clara Monroe. Her dress had seen better days, patched and repatched. No wedding ring. Traveling alone with a baby in this weather meant desperation or danger. Maybe both. "Thank you," she said softly. "I saw your light through the storm. Thought I might die out there." "Where you headed?" "Redemption Creek. My cousin lives there. Said she could help me find work." Lie sat obvious in her pause, but he didn't push. Everyone had their secrets out here. Emily returned with supplies, and they worked in strange harmony. Clara cleaned the baby while Emily held the water. Ethan found himself heating milk on the stove, something he hadn't done since Emily was tiny. The domestic sounds, water splashing, baby fussing. Emily's questions filled the house in a way that made his chest ache. "He's hungry," Clara said apologetically when Daniel wouldn't stop crying. "I'll step outside," Ethan offered, but she shook her head. "Just turn around. Please, I'm too tired for modesty." He faced the wall, listening to the baby's cries, quiet to contented suckling. Emily kept up a stream of chatter about the ranch, the chickens, her doll named Susanna. Clara responded with gentle murmurs, and Ethan found himself gripping the doorframe. This was what he'd lost. Not just Margaret, but the easy rhythm of family, the sounds of life instead of silence. "You can turn around now." Clara had the baby wrapped again, his face peaceful in sleep. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, looking up at Clara like she'd hung the moon. "You'll stay tonight," he said, not a question. "Storm won't blow out before morning." "I couldn't impose—" "Already have," he softened the words with a slight smile. "Besides, Emily would never forgive me if I sent you back out there." They made an odd supper party. He cooked beans and cornbread while Clara held Daniel and Emily set the table with careful precision. The storm raged outside, but inside felt almost normal, dangerous. How normal it felt. "Where's Mr. Monroe?" Emily asked with a child's directness. Clara's hand stilled on Daniel's back. "He's gone ahead to prepare things." Another lie, but Emily accepted it. Ethan didn't. He'd seen that particular shadow in too many women's eyes. Monroe was gone. All right, but not to any place Clara would follow. After supper, he made up a bed in the sewing room. Clara protested, said the floor would do fine, but he wouldn't hear it. Margaret would skin me alive, he said, then caught himself. Speaking her name had gotten easier somehow, with strangers in her space. Clara touched his arm lightly. She was lucky to have a husband who still honors her wishes. He pulled away, mumbled something about checking the stock, and escaped to the barn. The animals huddled together, nervous but safe. He stayed longer than needed, letting the familiar smells of hay and horsehide settle his rattled mind. When he returned, the house was quiet except for the storm. He found Clara in the main room, rocking Daniel and humming. The melody caught him like a fist to the gut, not Margaret's song, but something older, sadder. Couldn't sleep, she explained. He's restless, knows we're not home. Where's home? She kept rocking. Used to be Kansas, before that, Missouri, before that. She shrugged. Home's wherever we stop running, I suppose. He should ask what she was running from, should worry about bringing trouble to his door. Instead, he found himself saying, "Coffee's still warm." They sat in comfortable silence while the baby slept. The storm seemed farther away with company to share it. When Clara finally took Daniel back to the sewing room, she paused at the door. "You're Emily. She's special. The way she just accepted us. She's been lonely." The admission surprised him. "We both have." Clara nodded slowly. Loneliness makes people do desperate things, like walking into dust storms, or opening doors to strangers. After she'd gone, he sat up a while longer, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of others in his house. Baby sounds, woman sounds, life sounds. For the first time in 6 months, the empty spaces felt less like wounds and more like rooms waiting to be filled again. Morning came with the kind of stillness that follows violence. The storm had blown itself out, leaving drifts of sand against the house like snow and a sky scraped clean. Ethan woke to unfamiliar sounds, a baby cooing, footsteps that weren't his own, the clatter of pans in the kitchen. He found Clara at the stove. Daniel balanced on one hip while she stirred something in Margaret's big pot. Emily sat at the table, carefully folding napkins the way her mother had taught her. "You didn't need to," he started. "Breakfast is small payment for shelter," Clara interrupted, not turning around. "Besides, your stores were getting low. When did you last go to town?" He couldn't remember. 2 weeks 3 time had become elastic since Margaret died, stretching and compressing without meaning. "Sit," Clara commanded gently. "Emily's been telling me about your morning routines." The girl beamed. "I told her you like your coffee black as mud and twice as thick." "Traitor," he muttered, but sat. Clara had made porridge, but somehow it tasted different from his usual attempts. Better. She'd found the last of Margaret's preserves, added cinnamon from the precious store in the pantry. The coffee was perfect, strong enough to float a horseshoe. "I should check the stock," he said between bites. "I could help," Clara offered. "I'm stronger than I look." "Me too," Emily chimed in. He studied Clara over his cup, in daylight, without the storm's terror. He could see her more clearly. Young, maybe 25. Her hands bore calluses from work, not the soft hands of a lady. Daniel looked well-fed despite their obvious poverty. "All right," he decided. "But you," he pointed at Emily, "stay with Daniel. Someone needs to mind him." Emily's chest puffed with importance. "I know about babies, Mrs. Garrett let me hold her new one at church." Outside, the ranch looked like it had been beaten with a giant's fist. Sand drifts covered half the chicken coop. A section of fence lay flat, but the animals had survived, clustered in the barn's shelter. Clara worked without complaint, helping him dig out the coop and scatter feed. She handled the chickens with practiced ease, clucking at them in a way that made them settle. "You've done this before," he observed. "My father farmed, before he died." She gathered eggs with steady hands. "I was 12. Mama remarried quick, had to, but my stepfather, she shrugged. I learned it's better to know how to do for yourself. They worked in companionable silence, setting the ranch to rights. By noon, sweat soaked through his shirt despite the mild temperature. Clara had pushed her sleeves up, revealing arms marked by old bruises gone yellow-green. He didn't comment. Wasn't his business, but his jaw tightened. I should move on, Clara said suddenly. Tomorrow, if the weather holds. You've been kind, but storm damaged the road to Redemption Creek. Won't be passable for days. Maybe a week. It wasn't entirely a lie. The road was always bad after storms. She stopped working, studied him. Why? Why what? Why offer shelter to strangers? You don't know me. I could be trouble. He thought of Emily's laughter at breakfast, the first real joy he'd heard from her in months. Maybe I need the help. Ranch is too much for one man. And when the road clears, worry about that then. He hefted a bag of feed. For now, there's work needs doing and you need a safe place. Seems simple enough. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked it away. I can work, cook, clean, mend. I'm good with numbers too, kept books for a shop in Kansas. Room and board for help around the place, he said carefully. Till you figure your next step. Fair. More than fair. She offered her hand like a man would, to shake on the deal. Her grip was firm. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Ethan, he corrected. And that settled then. The rest of the week fell into rhythm with surprising ease. Clara rose early, had breakfast ready when he came in from morning chores. She attacked the house with determined energy washing, mending, organizing. The place hadn't been truly clean since Margaret took sick. Emily bloomed like a desert flower after rain. She followed Clara everywhere, helping with Daniel, learning new ways to braid her hair, chattering nonstop. At night, Clara told stories while she sewed tales of princesses and dragons that bore suspicious resemblance to farm girls and drought. She's not trying to replace your wife, Clara said one evening. They sat on the porch while Emily played with Daniel on a blanket. I've told her stories about her mother, from what Emily shared. I hope that's all right. It's good, he admitted. I haven't been able to talk about her much. Grief's like that. Makes your throat close up when you need words most. Sunday came, and with it the need for town. Ethan hitched the wagon while Clara dressed Emily in her church clothes, the ones Margaret had sewn last spring, already getting short in the arms. You don't have to come, he told Clara. Folks can be particular. Hiding won't improve matters. She emerged wearing her best dress, still shabby but clean and pressed. She'd pinned her hair up proper, looked almost like a respectable widow. Almost. The ride to Redemption Creek took 2 hours. Emily filled it with questions and observations, but Ethan noticed Clara growing quieter as buildings appeared on the horizon. The town sprawled along Willow Creek, ambitious in name if not in size. Main Street boasted Garrett's Mercantile, the church, a saloon, the bank, and various shops. People emerged for Sunday services like ants from a hill. Eyes followed them from the moment they rolled in. Mrs. Abigail Thornton, the banker's wife and self-appointed moral guardian of Redemption Creek, actually stopped mid-step to stare. Chin up, Clara murmured, though he wasn't sure if she meant it for Emily or herself. They parked among the other wagons. Ethan helped the ladies down, acutely aware of the whispers starting already. In church, they sat in his usual pew, Margaret's place conspicuously filled by a stranger. Reverend Hartley, young and eager to prove himself, preached on charity and kindness to travelers. Pointed message, perhaps, but half the congregation seemed deaf to it. They studied Clara like she might steal the collection plate. After service, Ethan tried to steer his small group quickly to the wagon, but Mrs. Thornton intercepted them like a battleship under full sail. Mr. Cole, Her voice could have frozen July. "We've been concerned about you and dear little Emily." "No need for concern, Mrs. Thornton." "And this is—" She looked at Clara like examining spoiled meat. "Mrs. Monroe," Clara said steadily. "Pleased to meet you." "Mrs." Abigail's eyes dropped to Clara's ringless hand. "How interesting. And you're staying at the Cole Ranch." "Mrs. Monroe is helping with housework," Ethan interjected.
"The storm left her stranded."
"Of course.
Christian charity."
Abigail's smile could have curdled milk. "Though one must be careful about appearances. A widow and a woman
under the same roof. People do talk."
"Then they should find better employment for their tongues," Clara said sweetly. Emily tugged at Ethan's hand.
"Papa, I need the necessary—"
He'd never been so grateful for a child's bladder. They escaped to the Mercantile, where Sam Garrett greeted them with his usual cheer, though his wife Susan watched Clara with curious eyes. "Need supplies," Ethan said, handing over his list. "Storm hit you folks hard." Sam tallied items with practiced speed. "Nothing we couldn't handle." Clara wandered the store with Emily and Daniel, pointing out different goods, letting Emily practice her numbers. Natural as breathing. The way they moved together. "That the woman staying out your place?" Sam asked quietly. "She's helping out." "None of my business," Sam said, which meant it would be everyone's business by sundown. "Just be careful. Ethan, town's been quiet lately. People get restless when they're bored." They loaded supplies while dodging more curious looks and loaded questions. Clara held her head high, but Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she clutched Daniel tighter. The ride home was subdued. Even Emily seemed to sense the mood, playing quietly with her doll instead of chattering.
"I should go,"
Clara said suddenly.
"This isn't fair to you or Emily. Your reputation—"
"My reputation survived burying my wife. It'll survive helping a woman in need."
"You don't understand."
Her voice caught.
"They're right to question. I'm not— Daniel's father wasn't my husband. We never married. He promised, but—"
She laughed bitterly.
"Promises are cheap as dust out here."
Ethan kept his eyes on the road. Man who'd abandon his child and its mother wasn't worth marrying anyway. Easy to say when it's not your shame to carry. "We all carry shame, Mrs. Monroe. Question is whether we let it bury us or build from it." She was quiet so long he thought the conversation was done. Then, soft Clara, just Clara, Mrs. Monroe was a lie anyway. "Clara, then—" He clicked to the horses. "And the offer stands. Ranch needs help. I need help. Don't much care what the town thinks about it." That evening, after Emily was abed, they worked together on the books. Clara did have a head for figures, catching errors in his tallies from the last month. "You'll have a good harvest if weather holds," she said, "but you need to modernize some things. That eastern fence won't last another winter." Margaret always said the same. Clara's pencil stilled.
"Tell me about her."
So he did. First time he'd really talked about his wife to anyone. How they'd met at a barn dance. Her in a yellow dress that made her hair shine. How she'd made him court her proper for a full year before accepting his proposal. Their wedding day. When a sudden storm had seemed like bad luck until she'd laughed and danced in the rain.
"She sounds wonderful,"
Clara said when he finally stopped.
Is,
he rubbed his face. "Don't know how to think of her, present or past."
"Both,"
Clara suggested.
"She was wonderful. She is missed. Both true."
They worked a while longer in comfortable silence. The lamp burned low, casting intimate shadows. When Clara finally gathered her things to retire, she paused.
"Thank you for today, for standing up to that woman."
"Don't thank me yet. Abigail Thornton's just getting started. She's got a nose for scandal and a mouth like a telegraph wire."
"Then we'll face what comes."
Clara smiled slightly.
"I've survived worse than small-town gossip."
As she left, carrying the lamp down the hall. Ethan sat in the growing darkness. The house felt different now. Fuller, complicated in ways that scared him if he thought too hard about it. But for the first time since Margaret died, he wasn't counting the hours until dawn. That had to mean something. Even if he wasn't ready to name what, the cough started small. Just a tickle in Emily's throat during supper. By midnight, it had become a bark that echoed through the house like gunshots. Ethan found her sitting up in bed, face flushed, struggling for breath between spasms. "Papa," she wheezed, eyes wide with fear. His hands shook as he felt her forehead, burning hot. The same fever that took Margaret had started like this innocent cough. Then fever, then... "It's all right, sweetheart." The lie came automatic. "Just a cold." Clara appeared in the doorway, wrapper thrown over her nightgown. Daniel sleeping in her arms. She took one look at Emily and thrust the baby at Ethan. "Hold him. I need hot water, clean cloths, and whatever medicine you have." "There's nothing." "Used it all when Margaret..." "Then we improvise." She was already moving, lighting lamps, throwing windows open despite the cool night air. "My mother dealt with croup every winter. Steam first, break the cough." They worked through the night. Clara boiled pot after pot of water, creating a fog of steam around Emily's bed. She showed Ethan how to make a tent with sheets, trapping the moist air. When that wasn't enough, she disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a paste that smelled of onions and something sharp. "Old remedy," she explained, spreading it on Emily's chest. "Draws the sickness out." Emily cried at the smell, but her breathing eased slightly. Clara sang soft songs, nonsense rhymes that seemed to calm the girl. Ethan held his daughter's hand, feeling useless as a broken plow. "Tell me about when she was born," Clara said during a quiet moment. "Why?" "Sometimes talking helps, keeps the fear from eating you whole." So he talked about Margaret's long labor, how scared he'd been, how Emily came out quiet, too quiet, until the midwife slapped her bottom and she'd wailed loud enough to spook the horses. How Margaret had laughed and cried at the same time, declaring her the most beautiful thing in creation. "She was right," Clara murmured, smoothing Emily's damp hair. By dawn, the fever broke. Emily slept natural, her breathing still rough but steady. Ethan slumped in his chair, wrung out as old washing. "She'll be fine," Clara said. "Needs rest and watching, but the worst passed." "How did you know what to do?" "Lost 2 brothers to winter sickness before Mama learned the tricks. After that, she saved every child in our county one time or another." Clara gathered the soiled cloths. Knowledge paid for with grief tends to stick. He caught her hand as she passed. "Thank you." "No thanks needed. She's a good girl." Clara squeezed his fingers briefly. "Though we should lay in proper medicines. Winter's coming." The next days passed in careful routine. Emily recovered slow but steady, spending her time in bed with Daniel for company. The baby seemed to sense she needed gentle entertainment, cooing and grabbing at her fingers. Clara never left Emily's side except for necessities. She slept in the chair, taught Emily to sew simple stitches, told stories about princesses who defeated dragons with cleverness instead of swords. "You're spoiling her," Ethan said one evening, watching Emily feast on Clara's special soup. "Sick children deserve spoiling." Clara tucked another blanket around Emily. "Well, children too. Come to that." "Mama never let me have 3 blankets," Emily observed. The words hung in the air like smoke. First time she'd mentioned Margaret without tears since the funeral. "Your mama was probably worried you'd get too warm," Clara said carefully. "Different mothers have different ways." Emily considered this. "I like both ways." Ethan had to step outside, emotion thick in his throat. The sun was setting, painting the ranch gold and red. Peaceful. When had it become peaceful again? "Ethan..." He turned. Clara stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the lamplight.
Supper's ready, if you're hungry. In a minute. She started to go, then stopped. It's all right, to let her love us both. Children's hearts are bigger than adults think. Before he could respond, she'd gone inside. He stood a while longer, watching stars emerge one by one. The night air carried the smell of Clara's cooking, Emily's laughter, Daniel's baby sounds, life sounds. A week after Emily's recovery, they made another trip to town for supplies and those medicines Clara insisted on. The reception was colder than before. Women gathered in clusters, falling silent when they passed. Men tipped their hats but didn't meet Ethan's eyes. At the mercantile, Susan Garrett served them with pinched lips while Sam was conveniently busy in the back. Clara selected goods with quiet dignity, but Ethan saw how her hands trembled slightly. We need laudanum, Clara told Susan, and willow bark, camphor if you have it. Medicine's expensive, Susan said, tone implying more than the words. I have money, Ethan said flatly. I'm sure. Susan's gaze flickered to Clara's worn dress. Though times being what they are, we require payment in advance. Clara's spine stiffened, but she said nothing. Ethan slapped coins on the counter harder than necessary. They'd nearly finished when the door jangled. A man entered tall, well-dressed, with the kind of careful grooming that meant money and vanity both. His eyes found Clara immediately. She went still as a cornered rabbit. Well, well, the man's voice carried smooth as oil. Clara Monroe. Imagine finding you here. Lucas. Her voice came out steady, but Ethan saw her knuckles white where she gripped the counter. Lucas Tate moved closer, boots clicking on the floor. Everything about him gleamed buttons, watch chain, the pomade in his dark hair. His smile showed too many teeth. Playing house. I see. His gaze swept over Emily, lingered on Daniel and Clara's arms. With my son. We need to go, Clara said quietly. Go, Lucas laughed. You've led me a merry chase. Darling, Kansas, Nebraska, now Colorado, but a father has rights. Surely even frontier folk understand that. Ethan stepped forward. This is neither the time nor place. Mr. Tate, Lucas Tate. He offered a hand Ethan didn't take. And you are the man telling you to step aside. Lucas's eyes narrowed. Protective, aren't we? Tell me, Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, do you know what kind of woman you're harboring? The lies she tells, ask her about the money she stole. Ask her about... Papa? Emily's voice was small, scared. Take Emily outside, Ethan told Clara. No. Clara lifted her chin. I won't run anymore. Not from him. She turned to Lucas. I took nothing that wasn't mine. And Daniel is my son. Lucas's veneer cracked slightly. My property under law. Children aren't property, Clara said. No, then what do you call taking a man's son kidnapping? Lucas pulled a paper from his coat. I have documents. Witnesses who'll swear you left in the night, stole money and goods. What judge would side with a fallen woman over a respectable businessman? The store had gone dead quiet. Susan Garrett watched with avid eyes, already composing the gossip she'd spread. She stays with me, Ethan said simply. Lucas turned his smile on Ethan. Noble. But nobility doesn't change law or nature. Boy needs his father. Seems to me he needs the parent who didn't abandon him. Ethan replied. The smile vanished. Careful. Mr. Cole, you don't know who you're crossing. I have friends, influence. This backward town has, what, one sheriff part-time judge. We have what we need. Do you? Lucas straightened his coat. We'll see. Clara, darling, I'll give you one chance. Come with me now, quietly, and I'll forgive everything. We'll start fresh. I'd rather starve. That can be arranged too.
He tipped his hat mockingly. "Mr. Cole, enjoy your house guest while you can. Ladies." He left, bells jangling discordantly. The store stayed silent for a long moment. "Will that be all?" Susan asked, voice dripping false sweetness. They loaded supplies in tense quiet. Emily clung to Clara's skirt, eyes wide and confused. Not until they were well out of town did anyone speak. "He'll make trouble," Clara said. "Let him." "You don't understand. He's rich, connected. His father owns half of Kansas City. He can buy judges, witnesses, whatever he needs." "Why'd you leave?" Clara was quiet so long, Ethan thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "He courted me proper at first. Flowers, promises, pretty words. I was young, foolish. Believed him when he said we'd marry. Then I told him about Daniel coming, and he changed. Said he'd set me up somewhere discreet, visiting when convenient. I refused. He hurt you." "Once. I left that night. Took what money I could find payment for my shame. He'd probably say, 'Been running since.'" Emily had fallen asleep against Clara's shoulder, worn out by fear and confusion. Ethan watched them, this makeshift family that had somehow formed in his broken life. "You'll stay," he said, not a question. "He'll destroy your reputation. The whole town already whispers." "Let them whisper." "Emily needs you. We both do." The admission came hard but true. "Whatever comes, we'll face it, together." Clara's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "You barely know me." "Know enough. Know you saved Emily when I'd have lost her. Know you work hard. Treat her kind. Know you're brave enough to run when you had to and stand when you could. What else matters?" Daniel fussed, and Clara shifted him gently. "He won't stop. Lucas likes winning." "Then he'll have to learn disappointment." That evening, after the children slept, they sat by the fire planning. Clara told him more about Lucas's family, their connections, the threats he'd made before she fled. "He doesn't want Daniel, not really," she said. "Wants control, to prove he can take what's his." "Daniel's not his. Takes more than blood to make a father." Clara studied him across the flames. "Margaret was lucky. I was the lucky one. You are lucky. Present tense. Remember." They talked until the fire died to embers, about practical things securing the ranch, legal preparations, keeping the children safe. But underneath ran something else, a recognition. Two broken people finding they might build something whole together. "I should go to bed," Clara finally said. "Clara," she turned at his voice. "Whatever comes, you're not facing it alone. Want you to know that." "I know." She smiled sadly. "That's what scares me most." After she left, Ethan banked the fire and checked the locks. Old habit from Ranger days, secure the perimeter, know your exits. But this time, he wasn't just protecting memories. He had something worth fighting for again. Something Lucas Tate would learn the hard way. The summons came on a Tuesday, delivered by Sheriff Brandt himself. He looked uncomfortable sitting at Ethan's kitchen table, hat turning in his weathered hands. "It's not personal. Ethan, you know that." "Course not. Jim." Ethan read the paper again. Lucas Tate was filing for custody of Daniel, claiming Clara was an unfit mother and a thief. When? "Judge Worthington's coming through next week." Lucas pushed for a quick hearing. Jim shifted in his chair. "There's more. Some folks in town. They're talking about the propriety of your situation. Unmarried woman living here." Clara stood by the stove, spine rigid. She'd gone pale when Jim arrived but hadn't spoken. "Let them talk," Ethan said. "It's not just talk anymore." Jim glanced apologetically at Clara. "Mrs. Thornton's organized some of the church ladies. They're saying it's a moral issue. Bad influence on Emily." "That's ridiculous." "I know." Jim stood, settling his hat. Just wanted to warn you, Lucas Tate's been spreading money around, buying drinks, making friends. He's smart. Ethan, don't underestimate him." After Jim left, they sat in heavy silence. Emily was at the Garretts, playing with their daughter. They'd thought it best to shield her from the worst of it. "I should leave," Clara said finally. "Tonight. He wants me, not you." "We've discussed this." "No, you decided, and I was too selfish to argue." She turned to face him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Look what I've brought to your door. Your reputation. Emily's future." "Stop!" He caught her hands. They trembled in his. "Running won't solve anything now. He knows where you are, where we are." "Then what do we do?" The answer came without thought. "We get married." Clara jerked back. "What?" "Think about it practical. As your husband, I have legal standing. Judge can't ignore that. Town gossip dies if we're respectable married folk." "You can't, that's not—" She pulled free, pacing. "Marriage isn't a business arrangement. Ethan—" "Isn't it most marriages out here start that way? Practical needs. Mutual benefit." "Is that what you had with Margaret, practical needs?" The question stung. "No, but Margaret's gone, and I've got a daughter who needs a mother. You need protection from Lucas." Seemed straightforward. Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. "Straightforward? You'd tie yourself to a ruined woman for straightforward?" "You're not ruined." "Aren't I? Ask anyone in town. Ask Lucas. He'll tell them all how I gave myself." She stopped, breathing hard. "You don't know what you're offering." "I know Emily loves you. Know you love her back. Rest we can figure as we go." She sank into a chair. "And if the judge rules against us anyway, if Lucas takes Daniel, then at least we tried. Better than running. Better than giving up." Daniel started crying from the other room. Clara moved automatically to tend him, then stopped. "If we do this, and I'm not saying yes, but if we do, I need to know something." "Ask. Could you ever, that is, would you expect—" She colored, looking away. "Would it be a marriage in truth or just paper?" Now Ethan felt heat climb his neck. They danced around this thing building between them, the long looks, the accidental touches, the way his chest tightened when she smiled. "I expect nothing you don't freely give," he said carefully. "But Clara, I wouldn't be asking if I didn't think maybe, someday—" "Oh," it came out soft as breath. Then, stronger, "When?" "Soon as possible. Tomorrow, if Reverend Hartley agrees." "He won't. Not for me." "Then we'll find someone who will." That evening, they told Emily. She listened with the serious attention of a child who'd learned too young that life could shift sudden as weather. "Would you be my mama then?" she asked Clara. "If you'd like, though I could never replace." "I know." Emily climbed into Clara's lap, careful of Daniel. "But I could have two mamas, one in heaven and one here." Clara hugged her tight, eyes meeting Ethan's over the child's head. He saw answer there before she spoke it. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, we'll do it." Finding someone to marry them proved harder than expected. Reverend Hartley refused flat out, citing impropriety and haste. The circuit judge wouldn't be through for a month. Finally, Sam Garrett mentioned old Pastor Wilhelm out past the mill, half blind. Full deaf, but still legal. They went Thursday morning, just the four of them in the wagon. Clara wore her best dress, mended but clean. Emily had woven flowers in her hair. Daniel gurgled in his basket, blissfully unaware of the stakes. Pastor Wilhelm's cabin squatted like a toad beside the creek. The man himself looked ancient as Moses, peering at them through clouded spectacles. "Marriage, eh?" He squinted at Clara. "You with child." "No," Ethan said quickly. "We have our reasons." "Always do." Wilhelm shrugged. "Long as you're both willing, I don't judge. Come in, come in." The ceremony was nothing like Ethan's first wedding. No church, no flowers, No crowd of well-wishers, just an old man mumbling over a worn Bible while Emily held the rings Ethan's father's band and a simple gold circle Sam had found in his store's odds and ends. "Do you, Ethan Cole, take this woman?" The words washed over him. He'd spoken them before, meant them with his whole heart. This time felt different. Not less meaningful, but weighted with purpose beyond love, protection, defiance, hope. "I do." Clara's voice shook on her vows. When Wilhelm pronounced them married, she looked stunned, like she couldn't quite believe it happened. "Kiss your bride, boy." Wilhelm cackled. "Less you forgot how." Ethan touched Clara's cheek, a question in the gesture. She nodded slightly. The kiss was brief, proper, but her lips were soft and tasted of promises. "Are you married now?" Emily asked. "We are," Clara said, wonder in her voice. "Good." Emily took their hands, one in each of hers. "Let's go home." Word spread faster than wildfire. By the time they reached town for supplies, folks stared openly. Mrs. Thornton actually pursued them into the mercantile. "Mr. Cole, a word." "Mrs. Thornton." He tipped his hat, kept loading flour. "Is it true, this hasty marriage?" "Nothing hasty about protecting family," Clara said mildly. Abigail's face went purple. "Family, you dare!" "I dare quite a lot, Mrs. Thornton, as does my husband." Clara linked her arm through Ethan's. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have children to tend." They left Abigail sputtering. Sam Garrett grinned behind his counter, giving them a subtle thumbs up. That felt good. Clara admitted once they were outside. "Don't celebrate yet. She'll make us pay for it." But for the moment, walking down Main Street as husband and wife, Ethan let himself feel something close to satisfaction. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Lucas arrived 2 days later with a lawyer from Denver, sharp-suited man named Pemberton, who looked at their ranch like he was cataloging its worth. "Mrs. Tate," Lucas said, tipping his hat to Clara with mocking courtesy. "Oh, wait, I hear it's Mrs. Cole now. How expedient." Mr. Tate." Clara held Daniel closer. "State your business." "Our business, darling, is this child you stole." He gestured to Pemberton. "My lawyer has some questions." "Then he can ask them in court." Ethan said, "Get off my land." "Your land?" Pemberton consulted his papers. "Interesting. Records show this property still carries debt. Significant debt. Would be a shame if someone bought that note." The threat hung clear as a blade. Lucas smiled, pleased with himself. "Furthermore," Pemberton continued, "this rushed marriage appears designed to circumvent justice. No court will—" "That's enough," a new voice interrupted. They turned to find Judge Theodore Worthington riding up, tall and stern on his gray mare. "Pemberton, should have known you'd be involved." "Judge." The lawyer's confidence faltered. "We weren't expecting you until—" "Changed my route. Good thing, too." Worthington dismounted, eyes taking in the scene. "Mr. Tate, I reviewed your petition. Also received some interesting telegrams about your activities in Kansas." Lucas's smile faded. "I don't know what you mean." "No, perhaps we should discuss it at the hearing. Day after tomorrow. 10 o'clock. He turned to Ethan and Clara. "Mr. and Mrs. Cole, I trust you'll be there." "Yes, sir," Ethan said. "Good." Worthington remounted. Pemberton. "A word of advice. Threats against property to influence legal proceedings is poor strategy. Good day. All." He rode off, leaving Lucas visibly shaken. The man covered it with bluster, promising Clara she'd regret her choices. But the damage was done. They left without their usual swagger. "What just happened?" Clara asked. "Not sure." Ethan watched the dust from their departure. But I think we found an honest judge. The next day brought unexpected allies. Several ranch families arrived offering support: the Millers, the Johnsons, even cranky old Buchanan from the North Valley. "Don't hold with men who abandon their children," Buchanan said, spitting tobacco juice. "You folks need witnesses. You got 'em." Even more surprising, Mrs. Chen from the laundry brought tea and quiet encouragement. "I know about running from bad men," she said simply. "You brave Mrs. Clara. We stand with brave women." The night before the hearing, Ethan found Clara in the barn, brushing the horses with violent strokes. "You'll take their hide off," he said gently. "I can't lose him, Ethan." Her voice broke. "Daniel's all I have of—" She stopped. "Of what?" She set down the brush, shoulders sagging. "My mother died having him. Her last words were to protect him. If Lucas takes him." Ethan pulled her into his arms. She resisted a moment, then collapsed against his chest, shaking with silent sobs. "He won't," Ethan murmured into her hair. "I swear it, Clara, he won't take our boy." She pulled back at that. Been thinking of him that way for a while now? That all right?" Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Margaret was more than lucky. She was blessed. This time when he kissed her, it wasn't brief or proper. It was promise and passion, hope and fear, everything they couldn't say in words. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Clara whispered against his lips, "I want you to know this marriage may have started as protection, but it's become more, at least for me." "For me, too," he admitted. "Been falling since you walked through that door in the storm." They stood together in the barn's quiet, holding each other while the horses nickered softly and the ranch settled into sleep. Tomorrow would bring battle. But tonight, they had this two hearts finding shelter in each other against whatever storms might come. The courthouse overflowed with curious townspeople when the hearing began. Judge Worthington had to bang his gavel 3 times before the crowd settled. Clara sat between Ethan and Emily, Daniel quiet in her arms. Across the aisle, Lucas lounged with studied confidence while Pemberton shuffled papers. "This hearing will determine custody of the minor child, Daniel," Worthington announced. "Mr. Tate, as petitioner, you may begin." Pemberton rose smoothly. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. My client fathered this child with Miss Monroe. I apologize. Mrs. Cole, while under the impression they would marry. Instead, she fled in the night, taking money and valuables belonging to Mr. Tate. We seek only the return of his son." "Any proof of theft?" Worthington asked. "The woman's presence here, hundreds of miles from Kansas, speaks to guilty flight. Or simple travel. Continue." Pemberton called witnesses: a boarding house owner who claimed Clara left owing rent, a merchant who swore she'd taken goods without payment. Each testimony felt rehearsed, paid for. Then Lucas took the stand. He painted himself as a heartbroken father, Clara as a seductress who'd trapped him then stolen from him. His performance was polished, effective. Clara's knuckles went white, gripping Ethan's hand. "She denied me my son," Lucas concluded. What kind of woman keeps a father from his child? When their turn came, Clara spoke first. Her voice started shaky but gained strength as she told her story. The promises Lucas made, the plans they'd discussed, how everything changed when she told him about the baby. "He offered to set me up in a house on the wrong side of town," she said quietly. "Visit when convenient, like I was, merchandise to be stored until needed. When I refused, he struck me. I left that night." "Lies," Lucas spat. "Mr. Tate, you'll have opportunity for rebuttal," Worthington warned. Clara continued, describing her flight, the struggle to survive, finding shelter with the Coles. "I took money from his desk, that's true, $50. Less than he'd spend on a night's entertainment. I considered it wages owed. And the goods from the merchant. Food for Daniel, milk and bread. Her chin lifted. I'd steal again to feed my son. The crowd murmured, some approving, others scandalized. Ethan testified next, explaining how Clara arrived, her work at the ranch, her care for Emily during the illness. She saved my daughter's life. Your Honor, that's not something a woman of low character does. Several neighbors spoke on Clara's behalf, testifying to her good nature, hard work, devoted motherhood. Even Sam Garrett admitted she'd never taken so much as a penny candy without payment at his store. This rushed marriage. Pemberton pressed during cross-examination. Convenient timing. Wouldn't you say? Nothing convenient about marriage. Ethan replied, It's commitment. Something, mister. Tate seems unfamiliar with. More murmurs. Lucas's face darkened. Judge Worthington called a recess. In the hallway. Allies and enemies mixed uneasily. Mrs. Thornton held court near the door, proclaiming the scandal of it all. Bought testimony, she declared. That Tate fellow may be unsavory, but at least he's trying to claim his responsibilities. Like he claimed them when he abandoned Clara, Mrs. Chen asked quietly. Abigail turned on her. You would defend her kind. What kind is that? Old Buchanan stepped forward. Hard-working, motherly, or just desperate enough to run from a bad man. The argument might have escalated, but Worthington called them back. I've reviewed the evidence, he said. Also received interesting information from Kansas, Mr. Tate. You've been married 3 years, have you not? The courtroom erupted. Lucas shot to his feet. That's not she's barren, a man has needs. Evidently. Worthington's voice could have frozen hell. So, you pursued Miss Monroe while married, promised marriage you couldn't deliver, then attempted to make her your mistress. When she refused, you're suddenly a devoted father. Your Honor, Pemberton tried. The existence of another marriage doesn't negate paternal rights. No, but it speaks to character, as does this. Worthington held up a telegram. 3 other women in Kansas City claim Mr. Tate fathered their children and abandoned them. Shall we discuss those responsibilities? Lucas went white. Those women are lying. Perhaps, but it establishes a pattern. Worthington looked to Clara and Ethan. Mr. and Mrs. Cole, please stand. They rose, Clara trembling against Ethan's side. The court finds no evidence of theft beyond survival necessity. The child Daniel has been well cared for by his mother, now supported by a legal marriage to a man of good standing. Mr. Tate's claim is denied. The gavel fell like thunder. Clara sagged against Ethan, tears flowing free. Emily hugged her skirts while Daniel, oblivious to his fate being decided, reached for Ethan's hat. This isn't over, Lucas snarled, pushing past Pemberton. You think you've won, I'll ruin you. Buy your debts. Burn your ranch. Sheriff Brandt stepped forward. That sounds like threats. Mr. Tate, maybe you should move along. Lucas left spewing promises of revenge. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with gossip. Some congratulated the Coles. Others muttered about bought justice. Come on, Ethan said, guiding his family out. Let's go home. The victory felt hollow on the ride back. Clara stayed quiet, holding Daniel close. Emily sensed the mood and didn't chatter as usual. He meant it, Clara finally said. The threats. He'll follow through. Let him try. But that night, Ethan checked the rifle, barred the doors solid. He'd learned in the Rangers winning the battle didn't mean the war was over. The celebration, such as it was, came 2 days later. A small gathering of supporters at the ranch. The Millers brought a cake. Mrs. Chen embroidered a blanket for Daniel. The ranch hands toasted with whiskey Ethan had been saving. To justice. Buchanan raised his glass. To family, Sam Garrett countered. To courage, Mrs. Chen added softly, eyes on Clara. They drank, laughed, let the children play.
For a few hours, it felt like peace might be possible. As evening fell and guests departed, Clara and Ethan found themselves alone on the porch. Emily had fallen asleep inside, Daniel in his basket beside her. "I should thank you," Clara said, "for everything. The marriage, standing up to Lucas. No thanks needed between husband and wife." "Husband and wife," she tested the words. "Still feels strange, like I'm wearing someone else's life." "It's yours now, ours." She turned to him in the fading light. "Ethan, what we said in the barn
Meant every word.
So did I." She moved closer. "But I'm frightened. Not of Lucas anymore, but of this, of hoping for something good and losing it." He pulled her against him, feeling how she fit just right in his arms. "Can't promise nothing bad will happen, but I can promise you won't face it alone." "That might be enough," she whispered. They stood together watching stars emerge. Two damaged souls learning to trust in tomorrow. Inside, their children slept safe. Outside, the ranch stretched peaceful under the vast Colorado sky. But peace, like justice, could be temporary. 3 nights later, Ethan woke to the smell of smoke. He rolled from bed, grabbed the rifle, and peered out the window. Orange light flickered from the barn. "Fire!" He shook Clara awake. "Get the children." They worked with desperate efficiency. Clara bundled Emily and Daniel, rushing them to safety while Ethan and the hands formed a bucket brigade. The fire hadn't spread far, just the back corner where they stored winter feed. "Here, Miguel," one of the hands pointed to scattered lamp oil. "Someone said it." They doused the flames before major damage, but the message was clear. This was warning, not destruction. Yet, "Lucas," Clara said. She'd come back after securing the children with the Miller family down the road. "Can't prove it," Sheriff Brandt said when he arrived at dawn. "Tate's been visible in town all evening, playing cards at the saloon with witnesses. Hired men, then. Likely, but still no proof." Jim looked tired. "I'll increase patrols. But Ethan, you need to be careful. Man like Tate doesn't accept losing." Over the following days, more harassment came. Fences cut, water diverted, horses spooked in the night. Never enough to destroy, just to exhaust, to make them jumpy, waiting for the real blow. "He's trying to break us," Clara said one evening. They sat at the kitchen table, mapping out guard schedules. "Make us run or make mistakes. We don't break easy out here." She touched his hand. "I'm sorry for bringing this to your door." "Our door," he corrected. "And I'm not sorry, not for any of it." Emily appeared in her nightgown. "Can't sleep, keep hearing things." Clara pulled her into her lap. "Just the wind, sweetheart." "What if the bad man comes?" "Then your papa and I will protect you," Clara said firmly. "That's what families do." Emily considered this. "Mama would have liked you." The simple statement hung in the air. Clara's eyes filled. "I hope so," she whispered. "No, so," Ethan said. "Margaret had a gift for seeing people true. She'd have seen what I see." Later, after Emily was settled, Clara found him cleaning the rifle for the 3rd time. "We can't live like this forever," she said. "Won't have to. Men like Lucas get impatient. He'll overplay his hand. Or we'll collapse from exhaustion first." He set down the rifle, pulled her close. "Have faith. We've made it this far." She leaned into him, and they stood together in the lamplight. Outside, a coyote howled. The sound should have been threatening. Instead, it reminded them wild things survived out here. The meek might inherit the earth someday, but in Colorado territory, the stubborn inherited tomorrow. "Whatever comes," Clara murmured. "I'm glad we're facing it together." Together. Ethan agreed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of courage and defiance. The real test was coming. They could feel it building like a storm on the horizon. But for now,
They had this each other, their children safe, their home still standing. It would have to be enough. The attack came on a moonless night, swift and violent as a rattlesnake's strike. Ethan woke to the sound of breaking glass and Emily's scream. He grabbed the rifle and burst from the bedroom to find 3 men in the house, rough types with bandanas pulled high. "Get the woman and the brat," one growled. "Tate wants them alive." Ethan fired, clipping the speaker's shoulder. The man howled and stumbled back. The other 2 rushed him. He swung the rifle like a club, catching one across the jaw, but the third tackled him hard. They rolled across the floor, grappling for the weapon. Through the chaos, he heard Clara's voice, fierce and determined. "You won't touch them." A crash, a man's curse. Ethan drove his knee into his attacker's stomach, broke free, and found Clara wielding a cast-iron pan like an avenging angel. One intruder lay groaning at her feet. Emily and Daniel huddled behind her. "The barn!" Ethan shouted. More shadows moved outside. This wasn't just kidnapping, it was a raid. They fought their way through the kitchen. Clara carried Daniel while Ethan cleared the path, Emily clinging to Clara's skirts. Outside, orange flames licked at the chicken coop. Horses screamed in panic. Miguel and the other hands were already fighting. Gunfire cracked through the night. Someone had cut the horses loose. They milled in confusion, adding to the chaos. The root cellar. Ethan decided, "Go!" But Lucas Tate stepped from behind the smokehouse, pistol aimed steady. His fine clothes looked absurd in the barnyard battlefield. "Touching scene," he said. "The little family, united against adversity. Drop the rifle. Cole." "Lucas, please." Clara stepped forward. "This has gone too far. Someone will die." "Should have thought of that before humiliating me in court." His gun swung toward her. "You're coming with me. Clara, you and my son. Cole here can explain to his daughter why he couldn't protect another woman." The words hit like physical blows. Ethan saw Margaret's face, pale and still. Not again, never again. He moved without thinking, putting himself between Lucas and his family. "You'll have to kill me first." "If necessary." Lucas cocked the hammer. But he'd focused too hard on Ethan. Clara scooped up a handful of dirt and flung it in Lucas's face. He cursed, firing blind. The bullet whined past Ethan's ear. Ethan charged. They collided hard, went down wrestling for the gun. Lucas was stronger than his fancy clothes suggested, fighting with aristocratic viciousness. They rolled through the dirt, each seeking advantage. The gun went off. Both men froze. Lucas looked down at the spreading red stain on his vest. You shot me." "You shot yourself," Ethan corrected, pushing the man off him. The wound was bad, but not immediately fatal low in the side, bleeding steady. The fight went out of Lucas's men with their employer down. Sheriff Brandt arrived with a posse. Someone had seen the flames and raised the alarm. The aftermath was swift arrests. Lucas rushed to the doctor. Statements taken. "He'll live," Doc Morrison reported hours later. "But he'll be traveling in custody. Judge Worthington's issued warrants based on what we've found. Seems Mr. Tate's been busy fraud, extortion, abandonment of multiple women and children. He'll see prison for certain." The ranch looked like a battlefield at dawn. The chicken coop was gone. One corner of the barn charred, fences broken. But the house stood. The family survived. "We should clean up," Clara said wearily. "Later." Ethan pulled her close. Emily had finally fallen asleep in the house, Daniel beside her. "Just let me hold you." They stood among the wreckage, clinging to each other as the sun painted the sky pink and gold. Clara shook against him, delayed reaction. He recognized the violence hitting her now that danger had passed. "I threw dirt in his eyes," she said, half laughing, half sobbing. "My mother would be mortified. So unladylike." "Your mother would be proud. You protected your children like a wildcat." "Our children. she corrected softly. Then, pulling back to look at him, you could have died when you stepped in front of his gun. So could you, when you distracted him. We make quite a pair. She touched a bruise forming on his jaw. Both too stubborn to let the other sacrifice themselves. The intensity of the moment shifted, danger transforming into something else. They'd survived. They'd protected their family. The relief and leftover fear and sudden, overwhelming need crashed together. Clara rose on her toes and kissed him hard, desperate. He responded with equal fervor, hands tangling in her hair. They were alive. They were together. Nothing else mattered. Inside, she breathed against his mouth. Please. They barely made it to their bedroom, door locked against the world. Clothes were fumbled with, buttons scattered. This wasn't gentle or careful, it was necessary, vital as breathing. Clara, he groaned as they came together. My angel. Push harder, she cried, nails digging into his shoulders. I need to feel alive. He growled against her throat. Angel, I'll push until you burn hotter than the Texas sun. And they did burn with passion, with life, with the fierce joy of survival. They moved together like storm and flame, washing away the terror in waves of sensation. Every touch was affirmation, we're here, we're whole, we won. After, they lay entwined, sweat cooling on flushed skin. Clara traced patterns on Ethan's chest, over scars old and new. Is it always like that? She asked. After danger, sometimes, body's way of proving it's still alive. He caught her hand, kissed her palm. Was I too rough? No, I needed... She struggled for words. Needed to know we were real, that he didn't win. He didn't, won't ever... Ethan pulled her closer. You're stuck with me now. Clara Cole, legal marriage, consummated marriage, survived a siege together marriage. No getting rid of me. Good, she yawned, exhaustion finally claiming her. Because I plan to keep you. They slept hard, waking only when Emily knocked. Papa Clara, I'm hungry. Reality returned with its demands. They dressed hastily, Clara blushing at her scattered buttons, and faced the day. The community response surprised them. Neighbors arrived in waves, bringing food, offering labor, helping repair damage, even some who'd gossiped before pitched in. Nobody likes outsiders causing trouble, Buchanan explained. Hammering boards over the burned section, Tate overplayed, made himself the enemy. Mrs. Chen organized the women in cleaning and cooking. Mrs. Thornton notably didn't appear, but her husband sent lumber from their mill. People are complicated, Clara observed, watching the yard fill with helpers. Indeed. Reverend Hartley approached, hat literally in hand. Mrs. Cole, I owe you an apology. I let prejudice cloud my judgment, seeing how you defended your family. Well, courage like that comes from righteousness. Clara accepted graciously, though Ethan saw her hide a smile at being called righteous after the morning's passionate activities. By evening, the worst damage was repaired. The chicken coop would need rebuilding, but temporary pens held the surviving birds. The barn was patched. Most importantly, everyone was safe. Judge Worthington visited personally to update them. Lucas Tate's been charged with attempted kidnapping, assault, arson, and conspiracy. Combined with the Kansas warrants, he'll serve significant time. His father's disowned him bad for business, apparently. What about Daniel? Clara asked. Can he still make claims? A convicted felon has no custody rights. Daniel's yours, free and clear. Worthington smiled. Though I'd say he's been yours all along. Blood doesn't make a father, Ethan Cole proved that last night. After the judge left, they put the children to bed and returned to the porch. The night was peaceful, no threats lurking, no fear pressing close. We did it, Clara said wonderingly. We actually won. Together, Ethan agreed. She leaned into him, and they sat watching stars emerge. The ranch bore scars from the battle, but it would heal. They all would.
I love you, Clara said suddenly. Realized I hadn't said it proper, but I do. Love you fierce as any woman ever loved a man.
And I love you, Ethan replied, different from how I loved Margaret, but not less, just different, like you taught me past and present both being true. Think she'd approve Margaret? Ethan thought of his first wife, her generosity, her warmth, her wish for him to find happiness again. Yeah, she'd probably say it took me long enough. Clara laughed softly.
I'd have liked her.
She'd have liked you too. Probably would have been best friends, terrorizing me together. They talked long into the night about futures now possible, expanding the ranch, Emily's education, maybe more children, plans that felt real now, not just dreams. When they finally went inside, Ethan paused at Margaret's picture. Thank you, he whispered, for teaching me to love, for giving me strength to love again. The picture stayed silent, but he felt peace settle in his chest, the past honored, the present embraced, the future bright with promise. In their bed, Clara curled against him, already drifting toward sleep. No more adventures for a while. Agreed, she murmured. Agreed. Just ordinary days, boring, peaceful, ordinary days. Sounds perfect. But even as they settled into earned peace, Ethan kept one hand near the rifle. Some habits died hard in men who'd learned the price of safety. He'd protect this family, this life, this second chance at love, with everything he had. Lucas Tate was finished, but the world held other challenges: drought, disease, the 1,000 natural dangers of frontier life. They'd face those too when they came. Together. For now, though, he held his wife close and listened to their children breathing safe in the next room. The ranch stood solid around them. Tomorrow would bring its own troubles, but tonight they'd won everything that mattered. Love, family, home, and the fierce, bright promise of all the tomorrows to come. The courthouse felt different in daylight, without the pressure of custody battles or criminal charges. Lucas Tate sat shackled between two marshals, his fine clothes replaced with prison gray. The gunshot wound had healed poorly, leaving him with a permanent limp and a bitter twist to his mouth. Judge Worthington presided over the criminal trial with stern efficiency. The evidence was overwhelming testimony from the hired men, financial records showing bribes, and witnesses from Kansas who'd traveled to testify about Lucas's pattern of abandonment. Clara sat rigid beside Ethan, hands folded tight in her lap, facing Lucas again. Even diminished and chained, brought back the fear. But when called to testify, she spoke clear and strong about that night, the attack, the fire, the threat to her children. He would have taken Daniel, she said, meeting Lucas's glare steadily. Not because he loved him, but because he couldn't bear losing. My son was just property to him, like I was supposed to be. The jury deliberated less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. 15 years in territorial prison. As they led Lucas away, he turned back once, not to Clara, but to Ethan. Take care of them, he said quietly. Better than I would have. It was the closest to decency Lucas Tate had ever come. Then he was gone, shuffling in chains toward whatever redemption 15 years of hard labor might bring. Outside the courthouse, Clara breathed deep of the crisp autumn air. It's really over. This part is, Ethan agreed. Rest is just beginning. The ride home was quiet, each lost in thought. Emily had stayed with the Millers during the trial, and Daniel with them. Time to reclaim normal life if they remembered what that looked like. But normal proved elusive. The ranch bore scars that would take time to heal. They'd lost half their chickens. Winterfeet had been destroyed, and the legal battles had eaten into their savings. Neighbors had been generous, but charity only went so far. We need to be smart, Clara said one evening, spreading ledgers across the kitchen table.
The cattle sales will help, but barely cover debts. If we have one bad season, we'll make it work. Ethan studied the numbers. Clara's education showed she'd found ways to stretch every penny, tracked every expense. I could take in sewing, she suggested. Mrs. Chen said the seamstress in town is overwhelmed. And I could break horses for the army. Fort Collins always needs mounts. They planned late into the night, building budgets from hope and determination. Emily wandered out in her nightgown, rubbing sleepy eyes. Why are you still awake? Growing up talk, Clara said, pulling her into her lap. Boring number things. I like numbers. Mrs. Patterson says I'm good at arithmetic. Then maybe you'll help with the books when you're older. Ethan suggested. Emily brightened, like a real ranch partner. Exactly like that. After Emily returned to bed, Clara smiled. She's growing so fast. Won't be long before she's running this place better than us. Probably. Ethan caught her hand. Speaking of growing, how would you feel about Emily having a brother or sister? Clara's breath caught. Are you asking or telling? Asking? Hoping? We've never talked about more children. I've thought about it. She turned their linked hands, studying the calluses and scars. Worried, too. What if something happens? Childbirth is dangerous, and we're already stretched thin. Then we wait, or we don't have more. You and Emily and Daniel are enough. Clara, more than I ever thought I'd have again. She kissed him soft and sweet. Let's see what God plans. But yes, I'd love more children. Your children. Our children, he corrected, and kissed her back. The harvest came in better than expected. Good weather held long enough to bring in the corn and wheat. Cattle prices rose slightly. Clara's sewing business grew quickly, her neat stitches and fair prices drawing customers from as far as Fort Collins. Winter arrived harsh but manageable. They'd laid in supplies carefully, and the new chicken coop Ethan built was snug against storms. Evenings were spent around the fire, Clara sewing, Ethan mending tack, Emily practicing letters while Daniel learned to walk. Papa, Daniel called one December evening, toddling toward Ethan with arms outstretched. Ethan froze. The boy had been saying Mama for months, but this was new. Did he just... Papa, Daniel repeated, collapsing into Ethan's arms with a giggle. Clara watched with tears in her eyes as Ethan lifted the boy high, both of them laughing. Emily joined them, declaring Daniel the smartest baby in Colorado. Our family, Clara whispered. Christmas came modest but joyful. Ethan carved wooden toys while Clara sewed new clothes. Emily made paper decorations with careful precision. They had no money for store gifts, but the house felt rich with laughter. The community had shifted too. The dramatic trial and Lucas's conviction had turned opinion. Clara was no longer the scandalous woman, but the brave mother who'd fought for her children. Invitations came for social events, church committees, ladies' circles. You've conquered them, Ethan teased after Clara returned from a particularly long church meeting. Nonsense. I've simply worn them down. But she smiled, pleased. Belonging felt good after so long outside. Spring brought unexpected news. A letter arrived from Kansas. Lucas's father had died, leaving his fortune in legal chaos. But the lawyer wrote that Mr. Tate Sr. had, in his final days, set aside a trust for Daniel. $5,000, Clara read, stunned. For his education and establishment when he comes of age. That's... Ethan calculated quickly. That's enough to secure everything. Pay debts, expand the herd, save for the children's future. I don't want his money, Clara said flatly. It's not his, it's Daniel's. His grandfather trying to make something right. Clara wrestled with it for days. Finally, practicality won. They established the trust through Judge Worthington, ensuring Daniel would have opportunities they couldn't otherwise provide. With debts cleared and pressure eased, life found new rhythms. The ranch prospered,
Emily bloomed in school, quick-minded and eager. Daniel grew sturdy and cheerful, following Ethan around like a devoted shadow. And Clara's worries about more children proved unfounded. By summer, her waist thickened with new life. "Spring, baby," Doc Morrison confirmed. "Everything looks healthy." Ethan fussed terribly, trying to stop Clara from lifting anything heavier than a teacup. She ignored him with affectionate exasperation, continuing her work with minor accommodations for increasing size. "I'm pregnant, not porcelain," she reminded him daily. But at night, when he'd rest his hand on her growing belly and feel the baby move, she'd see the wonder and worry mixed in his eyes. He'd lost one wife. The fear lived in him still. "I'm strong," she'd whisper, "strong as Colorado steel. This baby and I will be fine." Autumn brought the best harvest yet. They hired extra hands for the work. The ranch finally profitable enough to afford help. The house expanded to a new room for the coming baby, proper workspace for Clara's sewing. Mrs. Thornton even commissioned a dress, grudgingly admitting Clara's skill. It was the closest to an apology they'd get, but Clara took it gracefully. "You've grown mighty respectable, Mrs. Cole," Thornton said stiffly during a fitting. "I've always been respectable," Clara replied mildly, pinning a hem. "Just took some folks time to notice." Winter came gentler this year, or maybe they were better prepared. The house stayed warm, food plentiful, spirits high. Emily read stories to Daniel by firelight. Ethan built a cradle while Clara sewed tiny clothes. One evening, as snow fell soft outside, they sat together watching their children play. Emily was teaching Daniel a clapping game, both dissolving in giggles when he got it wrong. "Look what we built," Clara said softly. "What we're building," Ethan corrected, hand on her belly. "Not done yet." "Never done," she agreed. "That's the beauty of it." A letter came in February that made them both laugh and shake their heads. Lucas Tate had died in prison, not violence, but influenza. He'd left what little remained of his possessions to Daniel, along with a letter Clara burned unread. "Some words don't need hearing," she said, watching the pages curl to ash. "He's gone," Ethan observed. "Really gone. How do you feel?" "Free," Clara said after long thought. "Sad for the man he could have been. Grateful for the life his cruelty pushed me toward. Mostly just free." They stood together at the window, watching snow blanket the ranch in pristine white. The past was truly buried now. Lucas's shadow lifted forever. Only the future remained bright and possible as spring sun. No more looking back, Clara decided. Only forward. "Forward," Ethan agreed, pulling her close. The baby kicked between them, eager for whatever came next. Emily called for them to watch Daniel's new trick. Life beckoned with its 1,000 small miracles. They'd earned this peace through fire and trial. Now came the sweet work of living it day by day. Season by season, love deepening like roots in good soil. The ranch spread before them in the winter twilight. No longer a monument to loss, but a testament to resurrection. They'd both been broken. Together. They'd built something whole. And this was only the beginning. Spring arrived with the birth of their daughter, Margaret Clara Cole Maggie. They called her. She came into the world with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn chin, squalling loud enough to wake half of Colorado. "She's perfect," Ethan whispered, cradling the tiny bundle while Clara recovered. "Just perfect." Emily and Daniel peered at their new sister with wonder. At 10 now, Emily had become Clara's right hand during the pregnancy, while 3-year-old Daniel proclaimed himself the baby's protector. "I'll teach her everything," Daniel announced solemnly. "Lord help us," Clara murmured, but she was smiling. A year had passed since then. The ranch sprawled prosperous under the summer sun, expanded with new pastures and a proper barn. They'd hired 2 permanent hands Miguel had married and brought his wife Rosa to cook for the crew. The house hummed with life. Clara stood at the kitchen window, watching Ethan teach Daniel to rope fence posts. Emily sat nearby reading, occasionally calling out encouragement. Baby Maggie played at Clara's feet, babbling to her rag doll. "Hard to believe," Rosa said, kneading bread dough. "All you've built from such sorrow." "Not built from sorrow," Clara corrected gently. "Built despite it, maybe because of it. Sorrow taught us to value joy." Through the window, she saw riders approaching. Her hand tensed briefly on the curtain. Old habits died hard, but these were neighbors. The Millers. Come to discuss the new school they were building. Redemption Creek had grown. The railroad spur brought commerce and settlers. Where once stood a handful of buildings now spread a proper town with 2 churches, a school, even a small newspaper. Progress, they called it, though old-timers grumbled about change. "Mrs. Cole," Tom Miller called out. "Got those plans for you to see." Clara had been elected to the school board, a scandal to some, a victory to others. Who better to guide education than a mother who'd fought so hard for her children's future? They spread blueprints on the porch table, a real schoolhouse with separate grades, proper books, maybe even a music teacher. Emily hung on every word, already dreaming of the learning to come. "We'll need funds," Miller said, thinking of a harvest dance. "Auction, maybe." "I'll coordinate with the church ladies," Clara offered. "Mrs." Thornton mentioned wanting to help. Ethan raised an eyebrow at that. Abigail Thornton had become, if not friendly, at least cordial. Time and Clara's quiet dignity had worn down even the stiffest resistance. Plans made, the Millers departed. The afternoon stretched peaceful. Daniel had graduated to actually catching the rope on posts, whooping with pride. Emily set aside her book to teach him knots. Maggie toddled after them, determined to join whatever game her siblings played. "Remember when it was just us?" Ethan asked that evening. They sat on the porch swing he'd built last Christmas, watching their children chase fireflies. "Barely." Clara leaned into him. "Seems like this was always meant to be." "Maybe it was." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Margaret used to say God writes straight with crooked lines. Took me a while to understand." "You think she knows about all this?" "I think she'd be proud of Emily growing strong, of the love we built from ashes." He was quiet a moment. "I went to her grave yesterday, took flowers." "I know. Emily told me." Clara took his hand. "Thank you for keeping her memory alive for Emily, and for showing me it's possible to honor the past while embracing the present." Daniel's shriek of laughter interrupted as Emily caught him in a tickle attack. Maggie joined the pile, adding her giggles to the chaos. Watching them, Clara felt her heart might burst from fullness. "Bedtime," she called, earning groans of protest. The evening ritual was sweet chaos baths, stories, prayers. Emily helped with the younger ones, already practicing the mothering she'd learned from 2 remarkable women. "Tell the story about Mama in heaven," Daniel requested, snuggling into his bed. Clara had become keeper of Margaret's stories, weaving them into bedtime tales so the children knew both their mothers. It had been Ethan's gift to her, trusting her with his first love's memory. "Once upon a time," Clara began, "there was a beautiful lady who loved to sew." Later, house quiet and children sleeping, Ethan and Clara walked to the cottonwood tree. Margaret's grave was well tended, surrounded now by a small garden Clara had planted, roses and wildflowers, beautiful in the moonlight. "Been thinking," Ethan said, "about Lucas, about forgiveness." Clara stiffened slightly. They rarely spoke his name anymore. "He's dead," she said carefully. "Nothing to forgive." "Maybe, but carrying hate is like drinking poison. He gave Daniel life. Whatever else he did, that's worth something." Clara considered this. "I don't hate him anymore. Haven't for a while. He was broken in ways I couldn't fix, ways that broke others." She touched a rose petal. "I'm grateful. Actually, if he'd been decent, I'd never have run, never found you. God writing straight with crooked lines, Ethan repeated. They stood quietly, night breeze rustling the cottonwood leaves. Somewhere an owl called. The ranch slept peaceful around them, full of promise and hard-won contentment. I love our life, Clara said simply. Even the hard parts. Especially those. They made us who we are. Walking back to the house, they paused at the door. Inside waited warmth. Children. Purpose. Outside stretched land they'd paid for in sweat and tears and determination. One more thing, Ethan said, pulling a paper from his pocket. Deed to the ranch. Had it changed? Clara read by lamplight spilling from the window. The land was now in both their names. Joint ownership. Their children listed as heirs. Ethan. It's our place. Built it together. Should be official. She kissed him hard, paper crinkling between them. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Getting mighty forward in your old age. Mrs. Cole. Learning from experience. Mr. Cole. She grinned. Race you to bed. They ran like youngsters, laughing, in the children's rooms. Small bodies stirred but didn't wake, accustomed to joy's sound in their home. Dawn came early on ranches, but Ethan woke earlier, watching Clara sleep in the pearl light. Her face showed lines now sun and laughter and worry etched in equal measure. More beautiful for the stories written there. She opened her eyes, caught him staring. Deep thoughts before coffee, dangerous habit. Grateful thoughts, he corrected. For second chances. For you saying yes to a broken-down rancher? Best yes I ever spoke. She traced his jaw. Though I recall you did the asking. Details, he murmured, pulling her close. Later, over breakfast's cheerful chaos, a letter arrived that made Clara gasp. Her mother's sister in Boston, writing after years of silence. She'd heard of Clara's marriage, her respectability restored. She wanted to visit, to meet the children. Family, Clara said wonderingly. I thought that door was closed forever. Doors have a way of opening when it's time, Ethan observed. May I write her back? Clara asked, still uncertain after all this time about overstepping. It's your family, your choice. But Clara, this is your home, our home. Whatever comes, that doesn't change. Her eyes misted. Even now, even after everything, she sometimes needed reminding that this life was real, was hers, was permanent as those mountains. The school dance came together beautifully. Clara coordinated with a determination that had carried her through harder trials. The whole town turned out ranchers and merchants, old-timers and newcomers. You've done something special, Judge Worthington told her, surveying the decorated hall, built bridges where there were walls. Just did what needed doing. Clara deflected. Often the same thing. Ethan claimed her for a waltz, spinning her through lamplight while their children watched from the sides. Emily danced with young Tom Miller Jr., closely supervised. Daniel stomped on Rosa's feet, earnest in concentration. Maggie had fallen asleep in Miguel's arms, trusting as only loved children could be. Look at us, Clara laughed, breathless from dancing. Pillars of the community. Who would have imagined? I would have, Ethan said seriously. That first night, you walking out of the storm, I knew you'd change everything. Everything, she agreed, and let him spin her again. The seasons turned, as seasons do. Challenges came drought one year, flood the next. But the foundation held, love held, family held. Emily grew tall and clever, bound for college back east. Daniel showed signs of his grandfather's business sense without the cruelty, managing ranch accounts by 12. Maggie developed Clara's gift with needle and thread, Ethan's way with horses. And Clara's aunt did visit, bringing city airs and initial disapproval that melted in the face of genuine happiness. She stayed a month, returning to Boston with stories of Western lives lived full and authentic. "You've made something remarkable," she told Clara at parting. "Your mother would be proud."
"I hope so," Clara said. "I truly do."
Time softened all edges. Mrs. Thornton became an unlikely friend, bonding with Clara over grandchildren. The town grew around them, but the ranch remained their constant updated, expanded, but essentially unchanged, a place of refuge that had become a fortress of love. One evening, years on, Ethan found Clara at Margaret's grave. She went there sometimes still, talking to the friend she'd never met but felt she knew. Telling her about Emily's engagement, he guessed, among other things, how Daniel's thinking of law school, how Maggie won the state fair sewing competition. Clara smiled. "How you still bring me wildflowers every Sunday." "She knows," Ethan said certainly. "Wherever she is, she knows we kept faith." "All of us," Clara agreed. "Even Lucas, in his broken way, even the pain served purpose." They walked home hand in hand, no longer young, but not yet old. Behind them, the cottonwood rustled approval. Before them, the ranch spread gold in sunset light, testament to love's power to resurrect, restore, rebuild. Inside, their children waited. Grandchildren, too. Now, stories to tell, meals to share, life to celebrate in all its messy glory. The screen door closed behind them with the same creak it had made that first night, when a desperate woman stumbled from a storm into the arms of fate, or perhaps into the arms of grace. The fire crackled, voices rose in laughter, love filled the spaces that loss had carved. And in that fullness, two hearts that had broken separately beat now as one, proof that some endings are just beginnings in disguise, and that the strongest families are built not just from blood, but from choice, from courage, and from the daily decision to keep faith with hope. Outside, the Texas sun set like a promise. Inside, they were home. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, loss, and redemption in the Old West. I hope Ethan and Clara's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine in the telling. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can build our own community across distances, just like our characters did. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more stories of courage and romance on the frontier. Hit that like button if this story moved you. And please consider pressing the hype button to help more listeners discover these tales of the human heart. Until next time, keep riding toward your own sunset. Happy trails, partners.